Mariah the Scientist came on the scene around 2018 and landed a record deal almost immediately. Thrown onto festival stages early on with little preparation has left a stain on her career, with the question being, can she even sing? But she's an R&B singer, right? What an interesting dilemma to have. And the frustration began brewing as an already fatigued R&B audience was tired of what they call half singers. Concepts and visuals first, and singing just merely a background component. She's elicited strong reactions as some people feel like she's the antithesis of R&B's core values. But on the split, there is a whole world of an audience that appreciates her songwriting and vulnerability. What is it? And she's recently crept into the mainstream with her song Burning Blue and a new album that just released in August, with many observing that her personal life has often overtaken the music. The Young Thug love saga, how does that all fare with the music? Is she the future of the genre? Whether you like it or not, let's talk. Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron and I'm back at it again with another video. And today, all of the conversations that we've had about latch tech music, hookah lounge music, the chicken Alfredo boomerang has led to this specific combo right here. As an avid R&B listener, you guys know I am constantly keeping my ears to the music streets. And Mariah the Scientist is someone I have been eyeing for years and trying to get it to click. She's perhaps one of the most visceral R&B girls in the current class. People either really like and appreciate her music and assign this deeper value to it, while on the flip side, there are people who just don't get it and they will scream it from the rooftops. But a close lens has been put on her personal life. It's become a part of her brand. When her boyfriend Young Thug was facing life in prison, building this perception of her character. Some have found it romantic, which has aided in her musical connection, while others find it to be light dimming and quite frankly overshadow the music. And while music is subjective, I do think a truth lives somewhere in the middle. I did have a lot of you guys ask and request that I speak about her today. Maybe a shift within the cultural conversation, the genre conversation, the change in listeners' expectations and wants, because that's always shifting. Those who prioritize a subtleness, intimacy, a quietness, even in a genre like R&B, versus those who value vocal flexibility, diversity, and showmanship. And I think Mariah the Scientist is an artist or a musician where that comes to a crossroads and people just cannot agree. Let's talk about it. Like, comment down below. What are your thoughts on Mariah the Scientist? And if you feel like it, hype this video down below if you do get the feature. Let's get right into the video. So we have to start with context. Who is Mariah the Scientist? So Mariah the Scientist is 27 years old, out of Atlanta, Georgia. She did get exposed to formal music education by doing choir in elementary school. However, she took more of a liking to writing and to journaling and poetry. Her writing often focusing or rooted in realism, but also her emotions. Channeling that at a young age, putting it onto paper. Now, she graduated high school a year early and attended college in New York City with a hope to become a pediatric anesthesiologist. But she ended up dropping out her junior year to pursue music. And what I'm kind of hypothesizing is that writing was her true medium and singing was just merely, the secondhand vessel to get that out. Early on, when she was asked what her genre was, she literally said that she doesn't even like considering it singing, whatever that means. But that kind of sets the stage for what we'll talk about later. You're probably wondering why and what is a Mariah the Scientist? Why is that her name? I'm confused. Well, first of all, you can't really go by just Mariah because we already know the real MC. We know Mariah Carey. So already she knew she had to be creative with her name. Now, because she was going to school to become a pediatric anesthesiologist one day, her major was biology. And so because of that, she took some biology courses. And so she was almost a scientist. Somebody said Mariah the damn near Scientist, and I chuckled because low-key, high-key. Now, her first EP released in 2018, and less than a year later, guys, I kid you not, she was discovered by Tory Lanez. For some reason, I didn't know how linked her career was with him, but he was an instrumental part and played a mentor, a musical mentor, in getting her career off the ground. So he would end up signing her to his label. I believe it was called One Umbrella. And she also signed to a major label, RCA Records. And I want you to keep in mind, she had only really put out a SoundCloud project. It doesn't seem like she was super entrenched within the music scene, the NYC music scene. Going on to release her debut album, Master, which was produced by Tory Lanez. But I noticed how quick her label moved in producing an album. We've talked about on this channel so many artists, very talented artists, being held back by their label and never really getting a debut album, or it dragging and dragging. They were striking while the iron was hot. And in one interview, she was very transparent.
Like, I literally signed a deal and had never done a show. And I was like, I can't believe these people just gave me this money and they've never, like, they don't even know if, like, I'm really doing this. Nobody came to the studio to, like, check and, like, see if, like, verify that it was really happening. It was just like, they just coughed it up.
Right.
And it was just, like, crazy to me.
You know, you're going to take your blessings. I'm not saying you should turn it down. I think that's more of a label issue, and we will talk about that because that is aided in the rockiness of her career, but that's insane. They threw her this money and said, here. It didn't even really know her skill threshold. And it probably did help that she had some industry connections. So in 2019 through 2020, they were booking her for festivals. So she was performing at Coachella, Pitchfork. Y'all know these are festivals people don't get until years in their career. And she was snagging them off the bat, but had no performance experience at all. She was a studio musician. And because of that, she often went viral for her poor on-stage presence, her demeanor, but more importantly, her vocals. And unfortunately, that was the way that I was introduced to her music. I was not there for the SoundCloud release. I wasn't there for the first album. The first time I heard of her was when I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed. And the pitch, guys, the pitch. Granted, a lot of us did not know who she was, so we did not have context on how quick she was signed and how new and fresh and naive she was to the industry. And I also don't think that's our responsibility to do that. Right? You see a video of a singer, you're going to think that at least they'll be kind of decent or prepared. Absolutely not. But she began gaining a core niche audience. And she's since released 4 albums, 2 EPs, many singles. Not just carving a space in the R&B lane, but in developing like this alternative R&B sound.
I told somebody that I wanted to make a new genre. And I wanted to call it A&B, as in alternative and blues.
So some songs you may know from over the years: Spread Thin, Beetlejuice, Aura, Stone Cold, and now you have Burning Blue, which is her biggest song to date, which released in May 2025. It peaked at number 25 on the Billboard Hot 100 and had a pretty stable chart placement. So that's to say that it didn't free fall, that it was resonating with the public, and it really gained steam. This was the first song to ever do this for her. But a huge piece of this puzzle that I have not yet talked about is her relationship with Young Thug. Being posted on the blogs has done a lot for her visibility. Started dating in 2021, and very early on, she kind of became linked to him, spread her name and make it much bigger. However, things got really sticky when Young Thug was indicted in a RICO, and I believe that was like a year into their relationship. So everybody was looking at her like, are you gonna stay? Are you gonna walk? Are you gonna go? People became invested in this saga like a soap opera. What's gonna happen on the next episode of the Thug and Scientist saga? But it arguably kept her name in rotation no matter what. Maybe not so much for the music, but for the drama. There's a lot of stuff we have to read between the lines within this Cliff Noted version. She's been a polarizing figure in the R&B space, I would say, over the last 3 or 4 years amongst fans and critics. With her new album, Heart Sold Separately, released this past August, it has given me at least a bigger picture, more clarity to form an opinion, right? You get sold out shows, people are paying for it, you're gonna keep doing what works. Why go back to the drawing board when people are gonna show up? But to me, it almost has everything to do with the listener. What does the listener want? What does the listener value? Especially in the name of R&B music. Let's talk about the music. The gripes, the good, the bad, the ugly, the great, the amazing, and all of the opinions that fit in between. So for me, ever since Mariah the Scientist came on the scene, the first time I heard her voice, always felt that her vocals and her tone resembled Ella Mai's. And we know that Ella Mai had like this explosive few years, hit on hit on hit. However, we know that Ella Mai has significantly slowed down in her career, and this also left space for Mariah the Scientist. Would I say Ella Mai and Mariah the Scientist are musically the same? Absolutely not. I think there's nuances. Ella Mai really paired her music and singing with DJ Mustard production, and it gave her a more traditional R&B signature, but still with a modern twist, right? The trap beat, somewhat of a monotone vocal, but I would argue more control over her vibrato, slightly more range, etc. While you have Mariah the Scientist, who I think was a vibe curator from day one. Her vocal ability a lot more shaky, and I don't think that's something you can argue with me about. But I also think her production choices were a little more daring, a little more creative, slightly more alternative. So there's a difference there. But one of the reasons why I never got into her, it felt a bit copy and paste-ish for me. So I didn't really want to listen to another girl who sounded like another girl. And that transparently kept me away musically for the longest time. But Mariah's signature and appeal is her writing. And I would also say her presentation of that visually. She has a vision and executes it very clearly. Something that I always thought, even when I wasn't into the music and I would kind of scope her out and, see her here and there, I always thought that her album covers or her single art was visually eye-catching. It feels fresh, simplistic, but it has this visual focal point, this visual focus that evokes emotion, and it's simplistic. It's not too much. It's not too try hard. Even with her new visuals for Heart Sold Separately, the promo, the album cover, the album trailer, there's this balance of glitz and glam while also knowing when to sacrifice that and strip it down to aid in the story being told, right? We have this toy soldier metaphor that she's trying to tell in the context of love.
A little green toy soldier. Mm-hmm. It represents being dedicated to a cause that you're willing to die for, but you're small and you're a toy.
Toy soldier that boys play with, they dispose of, and they throw it in the corner. You're not actually a soldier. You're for play. You're for show. Feeling like your efforts are toy size. I dig the metaphor of her album. I dig the theme of her album. I get that. And I think Mariah the Scientist, out of a lot of the R&B girls, has a finger on that. I think she's very intentional. I did listen to the album in preparation and to really immerse myself, and I felt like the songs were very lyrically cohesive to the theme. I think she did a very good job of pulling out different aspects of the topic, shape this idea of love and war and life and fighting and peace and all of those topics you could touch on. Metaphorically, also literally, I thought it was a really good representation of that. And I enjoyed that. I really, really did. And it did wake me up a bit to like, okay, it depends on what you value. If you value the songwriting, I understand the appeal. I really do. Is it revolutionary? No, but I'm also not the best judge of songwriting. I do love reading. I used to love writing, but I'm also not the songwriting connoisseur. You guys already know for me when it comes to music, the musical components are the most important to me. So we talk about the instrumentation, the production, as well as the voice. I do think that she has a very honed way of capturing a concept, sometimes abstract, and really putting that into a song. Kind of like how she said Burning Blue, right? If you really listen to the lyrics to that, it can be sliced, diced, and interpreted many ways. And in interviews, she has stated that the listener can assign their value based off of the metaphors or what they think the story means.
I feel like it's a subconscious thing when you're making a song. It's not like you're doing it intentionally. I was telling somebody that, like, it doesn't seem like, okay, cold as ice, you came near, fire-breathing creature, and it melted me. In the moment, you're not like, let me do it just like that. It's just, you're just writing it out. Like, like how she's just typing. Yep. It's just coming out.
And I also think that's a very cool tool. I think it's cool to write something that has the shape of a meaning, but it's not fully fleshed out. It gives the listener a chance to use their imagination. I don't think listeners have to be spoon-fed. And I think that Mariah the Scientist has moments where she can be very philosophical musically, but she can also still be very realistic. I also do like some of her production choices. She did say, however, a lot of her process early on was honestly looking up YouTube beats. Actually, I think Burning Blue was a producer on YouTube. So is she cross-collaborating as much? I'm not sure. But I do think that she has a good ear for picking beats and production. Songs like Aura, To You, Heaven is a Place on Earth, Out of Luck, No More Entertainers, More. Those are a couple songs that I listened to throughout my process of writing the script. While I will say, for some really good songs, other production choices feel somewhat generic. I think that she actually has a very good ear for music and melody. There's some people who just naturally get it. They have this connection to music, even if you can't always sing it. You know what it reminds me of? It almost kind of reminds me of the dance coach that is not the best dancer, but knows how to communicate or knows what looks good. And that's almost what Mariah the Scientist gives to me. I think she has a very good musical inclination. On her album, songs like Rainy Days, Is It a Crime? I love the run-on sentence. I like the never-ending, the non-start and finish to that. Burning Blue melodically, I think are absolute highlights. But I also could not help but feel like the song would really take it up a notch if someone else sang it. And this brings us to the not-so-elephant in the room, the vocals. I couldn't help but come to the conclusion while I was listening to her catalog, her discography, was that the songs, the writing is good, the production is good, but I would love to hear someone else sing them. And it's really that simple for me. They would deliver emotionally so much more with, I wouldn't even say like this crazy powerhouse vocal range. I don't even think her music is written for that. But someone who's more vocally skilled, who has more tools in their toolbox to convey that. I mean, technically her range is limited. Like that's not up for question, that's not up for debate. But she has almost like this monotone vocal quality, this vocal presence. There's like almost no personality to it.
'Cause you knew when I walked in on Jamaica Avenue, getting it tattooed, 'cause sent from above, I am convinced. Now I lay it in a clay.
And for me, that creates a barrier and a block between the words she's saying and also what I'm hearing, right? So you could be saying some very flowery, beautiful, metaphorical words, but if your voice is not hooking me as an individual listener, it is hard for me to pay attention or care about what you're saying. She's another person who also, and I think a big part of it is the nasally tone. I think it works with some ranges. I think it works with some songs really well. I love some nasally singers. I really love SZA. I like Summer Walker a lot, and they all have nasally tones. I think we talked about Khalid had the same issue, and I said sometimes you have to know when to use it. You have to know when to lean into it. You have to know when you need to use clarity, because some of these artists have really great pens. They can write really well. They're saying some very valuable things, but I cannot hear it. I cannot understand you. And Mariah the Scientist has that issue for me too. But the difference with her is her speaking voice is naturally nasally. It has this nasal quality. So I do think that it's like harder for her to break out of that.
Okay,
That's
like
a
third
fact.
time's a charm, maybe.
But that's why good vocal producers are very valuable. They can kind of help create this balance and get you out of the monotone when it doesn't call for it. And for Mariah the Scientist, a lot of the songs, even on this last album, I do think that she's vocally gotten a bit better, but I also don't know if that has to do with like them really kind of knowing how to produce her vocals, I don't know. But she always sounded a half a key off to me. It always sounded a tad flat. And we'll talk about her live performances later, but it's pitchy. There were moments in a song like melodically, I'm rocking, I'm vibing with it. And something about the vocal it does not scratch my ear. It does not scratch my brain right. Something's off, like a half a step, sometimes a whole key. And I actually came across this tweet, which someone said, Mariah the Scientist kind of sings like a stripper that died in the club on her last dance, but doesn't know she's dead. Now, for starters, I don't know how y'all come up with this stuff. I don't know. But two, a general consensus followed and was like, actually, I never understood what it was, but that's exactly what her voice is giving. Like, it sounds kind of haunted, like it's withering away. Obviously, she's not necessarily going to be able to take tons of vocal risk, right? We know her range is limited. And that is what it is. I'm not even sitting up here saying that you have to have a 5, 4, 3 octave range, whatever. But at least be on key. Let's not be flat.
Bingo!
Let's get the key right. Whatever your range is, let's be on that key. But I'm also realizing that there's people who do not want to bring vocals to the sword fight at all. Now, I came across a TikTok by a creator named Elsie Not Elise, where she speaks about how good vocals do not equal a good song.
I feel like some music listeners focus way too much on technicality when the real question we should all be asking is, does the song actually sound good? Now, don't get me wrong, there's been artists throughout the course of history that have done both successfully. But to me, the vocals are still one element or one component of a song. The way everything just comes together in a song, all the components from the production to the songwriting to the artist's delivery is way more important than how impressive or technical the vocals sound. Riffing and running is not that impressive if the song structure is out of place. I mean, you could have a 10 octave range or incredible vocal control, but if the production is doing nothing to draw me in and keep me there, and it's not complementing whatever is going on, or the songwriting is corny, what even is the point? Nice about hearing a certain rawness to the vocals, where you know the artist isn't necessarily striving for perfection in that area.
And while I do not disagree, right, that's not rocket science. Just because you have a great voice does not always mean you make great music. And that's why historically, yes, you do have the vocalists who write and sing like a Mariah Carey. However, you also have singers like Whitney Houston, who has one of the greatest voices of all time, but she didn't really write her music. In tandem, they use collaborators, they use writers to enhance their vocals and to make sure the package is right. Because again, I don't think you need to be able to do everything. I think that collaboration is the heartbeat of art. I think that's important, right? Whether the collaboration starts at inspiration, whether it actually means being in the studio and working with one another and creating these beats. But I think a lot of people demonize it, especially in anti-singer sentiment. So I think that gets a bit misconstrued. But in this TikTok, when I went to the comments, there were a lot of people using Mariah the Scientist as an example. Someone who is not a good vocalist by any means, but in turn makes good music. While you have artists that they use, for example, like Chloe Bailey, who has amazing vocals, but the music is not hitting. It's not being packaged the right way. Music is subjective in a lot of ways. The same way you're allowed to like something and point out all of the reasons why you like it respectfully is the same way people are allowed to not like something and point out respectfully why. And I think a lot of people over the years for Mariah the Scientist vocally have been fair in their assessment. But there's kind of this rebuttal. People are compensating for that. Because she has been caught in 4K, not sounding her best. Like, vocals becomes devalued in a genre that's rooted in gospel, blues, and soul. Not only is the instrumentation, live instruments is a large part of that equation, but it is vocal expression, emotional vocal expression. So yes, sometimes I do have a hard time appreciating super monotone vocals depending on the track and depending on the words. And I don't think that's being overly critical or overbearing. To just ask that if you are a singer.
I still don't consider myself a singer.
Already,
I just feel like I make music.
If that is your medium, if that's what your vessel is, just make sure that you're fine tuning it enough to where you're on key. I do see a lot of people use Mariah the Scientist to prop up their anti-singer sentiments. So instead of saying, hey, I know she's not the best singer, but the music goes for everything else, and you're able to articulate that. I'm starting to see people say, so who gives a crap about vocalists? Who cares about singing? It's not that deep. Why do you guys need your singers to have 5-octave ranges? Why do you need this? Who cares if she's on key or on pitch? She sounds good. It's like, okay, now we're just starting to like completely devalue something versus just focusing on, hey, this is the strong qualities about it. Let's not lie. Mariah is also a bit more alternative. She does have tracks that teeter that line. So no, she's not a traditionalist, and that's not something that she's ever tried to be. I'm not trying to unfairly assign that, but I think the basics have been missing. As for the tonal stuff, that a lot of it is preference, so that's totally different. I also, for the love of the art, I cannot also be mad at somebody wanting to sing the words that they're writing and to having agency over that. So that's something that I can't sit here and police or say like she has to. But I would like to see her maybe write for other artists, her maybe still making her own music. But I just don't know if like the music, the singing is the best vessel always to execute that. And we also have to talk about the onstage commotion, her live vocals. There's a difference between being a studio artist and there's a difference in between live show, live performance. Like for example, when I would perform, when I did Nutcracker or when I did American Ballet Theater, Sleeping Beauty, we would rehearse in the studio with a CD. But what our instructors would always tell us is that when you get to the live show, there is an orchestra pit. And the tempo every night might be a little bit different because live music is unpredictable. So there is an aspect that is never fully controlled, but there is a magic to that. There's a synergy to it because everybody, every musician, every artist that is production, stage designer, dancer is in sync. You all have to be one. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's something you don't quite get in a studio version. So this brings me to when we talk about R&B singers where vocals is kind of like a pillar and has been a pillar of the genre. I think that we have gotten way too lenient with live vocals being heavily focused on backing tracks. Where's the live bands? And that's something that Mariah the Scientist has started to do recently that has made her performance sound more full. But a part of the issue is she never wanted a live band.
Strange. Like I like live music in general, but at the same time, I feel like live music can go in so many different directions because it's like human error, not human error, but just like human decision in the moment. So like you could just, if you're feeling something, you could do whatever. And I feel like as far as like hearing my music, I don't know if like sometimes I'm willing to step out. It's almost like I'm a control freak.
Yes. And so she sounded empty. Right? So I definitely think that's something like her new sets that I've seen for Heart Sold Separately on the Jimmy Fallon show, etc., have been much better because of the band. Like I said, when she first came out, she went viral for bad vocals. That was the first introduction for a lot of people. To the point where people have eyed her live performances like a hawk. So one mess up, it's going viral. However, there are a lot of things that can go wrong with live performances. Your in-ears might not work. The sound production might be trash, especially when you're doing festivals and you're working with different teams every night. There are things that can happen. However, you can only use that excuse for so long when there are so many videos and performances of you being pitchy and off key. We can't use that every time. At a certain point, it's like the boy who cries wolf. After a while, you can sit there and say, this time I actually couldn't hear myself. Okay, but when there's 50 other performances where you're pitchy and you're flat, the 1 or 2 times where you actually have malfunctions, I can't hold you to that. I have seen videos like last year, even this year, people saying she's vocally improved so much, when in reality, you can clearly hear that they have found the right settings for her microphone. You can literally hear when she talks.
Then y'all be crying to this one, but we don't do that. Free Stone Cold Center. To the fucking, how we go from love is a nothing. Hi. You gonna start it off for me? Please don't be so
Really a vocal setting, a pitch corrector, and that's not to like flame her. A lot of artists use pitch correction and auto-tune And in R&B, I don't like it. Chris Brown is notorious for that. You guys hear him. Yes, he's singing live. He is singing live. Mariah the Scientist sings live. But that pitch correction and auto-tune sometimes be heavily turned up. And at a certain point, if you're not like a Lil Wayne or a T-Pain and that's like a stylistic choice, you're completely masking. Let's lessen the pitch correction. Let's actually work on the pitch. So when we make this full circle and we take it back to her early career, we know she's clearly a gorgeous girl. She can dress. She has the image down. Her team was excited to add another girl to the R&B Vibes playlist. Live music was a second thought. And we'd be naive to sit here and say that. And social capital has nothing to do with marketability. And I'm going to go as far to say this. Some of you guys are going to roll your eyes. But if Mariah the Scientist were a darker skin tone, I definitely think that she would not be given as many passes for development, lack of singing skill. I just don't think she would have 9 lives. People are calling, we got to strike while the iron is hot. We're going to throw you out there. And for that reason, that's not her fault. I think they did her very dirty. The lack of development, signing people, snatching them up, and not developing their skill before actually throwing them out there does a disservice. Even if they are seeing fruitful numbers and things like that, when we talk about sustainability and legacy, you are already shooting them in the foot.
Like, the internet roasted me the worst way for like my first performances. I didn't know how to work the inner ear situation. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how I sounded outside of like, I just never had sung for any people. My first big shows were like my first shows. Like Rolling Loud was my second ever performance in front of people.
They should keep fighting to make it better and better. And I think that she's still severely behind when it comes to some of her peers. In September, she did a set at the Global Citizens Fest, and she was clowned for 4 days and 4 nights for that. That was very recent, y'all. Very recent. You know, I see what people are saying. I've seen the reasoning and the excuse of, I don't listen to her to see her live. I listen for the studio vocals. We're very lenient as a generation when it comes to live music in general across all genres. We're even more lenient despite concert tickets being more expensive than ever. Historically, music was made for live setting, like pre-1800s. Later on, they would record the songs live. Hey, we're setting up for a live performance, set up the mics, the tape recorders, boom. But then when commodification and consumerism really boomed in the 50s and then the 60s and the 70s, we see a large boom in recorded music that becomes its own industry itself. People are buying music for recording. They're not necessarily seeking out a live venue, right? In the same way they did. And the latter is the world that we grew up in. So I understand why we are that way, but we're very forgiving and very lenient when it comes to lackluster or poor performance. I would challenge you guys, like, have some standards. You are spending a lot of money on these people. It's not bad or rude or mean to ask as a consumer for quality, better quality. So to wrap this up, I do want to just put into quick perspective everything but the music. Her Love Woes, we already talked about. The Young Thug of it all. Prior to that was like this huge force in hip hop. So we have to say, like, it was a good look for her. When we talk about Atlanta hip hop, Atlantic music royalty, that was a good alignment. But his stock severely dropped when he was facing life in prison, got out, and he was accused of snitching and leaked jail calls, him talking about everybody else and their mama and cheating on her. We know that recently there was a call of Young Thug and Mariah the Scientist talking about Glorilla and her looks, and Mariah was egging it on.
The girl, Gorilla, she,
yeah.
Why don't people say she pretty? That's ugly.
You think she ugly?
You said it. Like, yeah, they say she ain't ugly. People be saying she ain't ugly. Bitch ain't mad.
They be saying she look like Rihanna.
Be like, goddamn, Brianna. Long ass, bush ass wig, skinny shit, big ass head, big mouth. Man, watch out. It's crazy. They probably really running around sneaking with a tooth in the hammer.
Oh yeah, I'm sure somebody in it in her DM and stuff. Probably. You know, but I be feeling like sometimes a lot of things like that, it'll be like, if the girl was regular, you wouldn't try to girl, you know, it's just like she got a number one song and
And a lot of people thought, hey, this is not a good look, especially considering a month or so prior, Glow brought her out for a set and they were very buddy-buddy on stage. Granted, you guys have to remember a lot of these people are actually co-workers in real life. Like, they're not really friends. For the longest, a lot of people were kind of trying to give Mariah the Scientist the benefit of the doubt, separating herself. Then he's in jail. Why are you doing that? A lot of people for the longest kept saying, I'm trying to separate her from that. Maybe it's not her, he's the bad influence. But the more a lot of this stuff has come out, people have kind of started putting two and two together. Is she the problem? Is she a part of that? And in R&B music, you would argue, isn't the drama and the heartbreak lore, isn't that a part of like the appeal? A lot of people say, I like people's music when they're heartbroken because it's some of the best. And while I think that has worked really well with like Summer Walker, her love life has clearly been a mess. Versus like SZA, where, you know, she'll talk about her love life, but we don't really know everybody she's dated. That's not the focal point. Mariah the Scientist, I don't think has been able to have or find that happy medium. There's people who really don't like her because they think she's not smart. You're letting this dude walk all over you. Or you've also kind of made your relationship the focal point.
In this interview, I know some people will say, oh, she talks about him, this and that. It's
No,
like,
I'm asking you
here's
about
the thing,
it. Let me be
everybody.
clear.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I don't mind talking about him.
Yeah.
She likes talking about her relationship. And while I think that is okay, like that's her life, it might be important. If you're like, hey, I want this interview to be very focused on the music, let's not really talk about Young Thug. Certain platforms, if you're on a podcast, a girly, lighthearted podcast, okay, I think this is more where we talk about the relationship. But if I'm sitting down with AP News or I'm sitting down with Billboard, I want this to be more focused on the music. Create that separation. Because although it's like they technically broke up, a lot of things have, you know, people have raised eyebrows. You know, the defending Tory Lanez, you know, standing through with Young Thug through the litigation. When he did get out, when she found out, you know, lashing out at the naysayers.
Those people who was laughing at me and laughing at the situation, making fun of us. All you motherfuckers who doubted me and doubted this shit and said this thing was never coming back. All y'all.
Canceling a show or two here when he came home. A lot of people found that to be unprofessional. The embarrassing leaked phone calls.
They're a little bit too long, the nails.
They long?
Your nails should not come over your fingertip. Long nails stop me from seeing the true beauty of your fingers and length, and you know.
The shady leaked phone calls, like
She was told all these things by me when I was in jail, but she ain't never heard it. Like, we already know about it. We been knew about it. You chose to stay with me, so it's just like, we rocking. Nigga, it's a different type of embarrassment to see, like, that you riding with, or you just holding down through this dark-ass moment. Just be on the phone with another, no matter what it's about.
it's a lot, guys. It's a lot. And I get it. She's like, I'm a real lover. I'm a real lover. Y'all say y'all love real lovers until you see a real lover.
They act like they want love and they want love for other people. And it's like, realistically, if that were the case, people wouldn't be so judgmental.
But I also don't think that as women, we should glamorize or glorify being treated terrible in the name of love. Now, do I think people should be demonized? Maybe not. A lot of people have been there, done that. You've been in really piss poor situations. So as much as I think like, yes, that has kept her name in rotation and in cycle, it's kind of intertwined their brand a bit too much to the point where he's not very liked. I mean, I think she brought him out for a show a couple weeks ago and her fans were not amused. So this is all of the lore and the reading in between the lines that have built this figure, this singer. So what are your thoughts? Hit that subscribe button down below to see more content like this. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.